that he's one of them. It's like thinking that Einstein was a relativist.
Right.
Well, I think he's not.
No, like you said, he was a critical realist looking for the absolute.
And, of course, there has to be a lot of non-absolutes if you're in the context of looking for that.
So, Dr. Strauss, we've been working through your handout on unpacking the foundations of the Enlightenment, modernism, and postmodernism, from objectivity to social construction of reality. And so far we have looked at Descartes, Hume's empiricism, Kant's perspectivism, Hegelianism, Kierkegaard's existentialism, Marx, Nietzsche's claim, the Darwin's revolution, and how that Darwinian evolution, the process has been applied to all different types of disciplines, and finally up to now Einstein's relativity thesis. And Einstein, he lived 1879 to 1969, and as you put here in your handout, Einstein was a critical realist when it came to epistemology. He was not a relativist. He was after the absolute, not relativity. And take it away, Einstein's
I
relativity.
believe that. So I think an enormous amount, all these influences are imploding in the world. And in 1914 or 1919, his equations were tested by astronomy.
Right.
And they, within plus or, I don't know how you'd be plus or minus 10,000ths of it, but anyway, his equations were just a micro off.
Right.
Just not even a degree off of calculation.
Rounded up and yeah.
Well, yeah, but when you go 4 places and
Yeah.
and
There's very, very little error margin there.
well, I wouldn't know how anybody would recognize
Right.
that, first of all. So it was precise. It happened just as he predicted. So again, that explanatory power predicted capability. Now they were testing his equation to see if it's correct in predicting. And it was correct. That's how come he became internationally famous. The little Jew is here because of Hitler.
Yeah, yeah.
And Oppenheimer, the great German Jew that was head physicist out in Los Alamos.
And like the old saying goes, we got the atomic bomb before the Russians did because our German Jewish scientists were better than their German Jewish
That's right,
scientists.
Oppenheimer said.
Yeah.
He said that our German Jews are smarter than their German.
Yes. Thank God for our German
Well,
Jews.
no,
yeah.
I think that's not false.
Yeah.
Because they had intelligent people, they just didn't reach it. Till they copied and they sent spies to get all the equations, how that happened. If you don't need the truth, then you don't need to send spies or deceivers into the marketplace. So in that whole thing, many people, if not most people, have heard of Einstein, but not his revolution. And that was the turn of the century, and that was the whole thing in the first, well, it was past the first decade of the 20th century. But you won't forget, and we won't let people forget, that by the 1920s, what's going to happen in our culture?
World War One.
That's pretty good.
There was
29, what?
well, there was a depression.
Don't tell me I was born on I caused the depression.
There was prohibition.
All right, no,
And
all those things.
All these things, yeah.
So it looked like scientific advancement, but culture, after the First World War, when they came back, they used to sing a song, "How you going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris?"
Right.
Well, that was not just a song, that was a moral evaluation. But anyway,
Roaring 20s.
our country, you're on the way to the Roaring 20s and what? Al Capone, booze, prostitution. So the culture is coming apart.
Right.
Is
A lot of
cult-
stress and tension.
Yes, it was the age of anxiety. Alden used this as an example of the age of anxiety.
Right.
So isn't it odd, at the time of great scientific achievement, the culture
coming apart.
Is coming apart. And I've used that. I believe it's still brilliant. That was 2 or 3 years ago. Howden wrote the book on the age of anxiety. Well, why was everybody so antsy? Then you had the roaring 20s, and everybody was living it up, and they were drinking it up, and they were...
And they had to pay for it in the 30s. Kind of, in a way.
Yes, without any question. Now, Chinese war didn't reach us, and then by 34, we're headed for the socialistic solution, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, of our economic crisis.
Which apparently prolonged the Depression.
And you can't, again, you can't give away money that you haven't got very long.
You eventually run out of other people.
I remember the PWA. You've heard of that.
Yeah.
Well, they built roads. We've got 2 or 3 roads right here in Lincoln, 1940s, after PWA was still in action. And those automobiles are 12-foot wide roads.
Yeah.
Oh, those old roads down southern Illinois, 57, those are all of them.
The kind where you hit a lot of deer.
Well, you couldn't escape. You'd have to get off the road.
Right.
But anyway, all these things are going on in the same world.
Right.
And you know this, what big battle was going on religiously?
Scopes.
Scoping Scopes.
Yeah.
Scopes trial. Number one, marvelous. Now one, enormous.
Well,
Modernist fundamentalist controversy.
Right. Like was it? Okay, so this was after Machen then?
Well, Machen's in that furor.
Right. Okay.
So
and of course, then our heritage splitting there in the early
34.
30s. Yeah.
I think it was 34. But that's all those things. See, they're not autonomous. You said
all this now snowballs into.
I believe that's correct. Mm-hmm. It's not a matter. Well, I got A in faith of our history of our faith. Mm-hmm. I got in the Roaring 20s. Well, how do you put that together? Because all those phenomena are going on, as far as I know, in the same world. Huh?
Yeah.
So modernist fundamentalist controversy. Modernists were these influences. Fundamentalists, they meant the fundamentals. But fundamentalism became, euphemistically, mindless Bible
thumpers. Right.
Redneck Bible thumpers.
And from the Bible Belt.
Conservative.
Right.
They hate that.
Literalists.
They snap their teeth.
Right.
Literalists. I have no idea what that means.
Sure, but that's one of the
no,
pejoratives.
not that.
Yeah.
But the modernist fundamentalists and the Scopes trial, all those things are unpacking over teaching evolution in the schools. Mm-hmm. Well, now they'd laugh you out of the court if you thought you couldn't teach evolution up in Bloomington, which is not a major academic institute.
Evolution is the new orthodoxy.
That's a new, and we've had students that go up to the teachers and they make fun. See, our students have to be A students to survive the ridicule in many of their classes that they take. And for the most part, they've survived, but they've got 2 pockets.
Right.
They don't survive academically, but they survive, because of ideas.
Right.
Well, that's happened. Education, all those things. They're not independent. Well, I'm in education. Well, education doesn't happen in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. These other things don't happen in a vacuum. Al Capone didn't happen in a vacuum. The Roaring 20s didn't happen in a vacuum. All these things. In a world that looked like we're at a turning point in science.
Right. I mean, up till World War I, the gospel of progress had replaced the gospel of Christ.
You know this. Nothing that you don't know, but the audience, the millions of people that are watching,
Yes.
would know. Inevitable progress, perfectibility of man, inherent animality of man, and ultimate hope. Those 4 assumptions are classical liberalism, but they stem from commitment to Darwin.
Right.
And that comes into classical liberalism. So the inherent, everything was a direct confrontation with anything resembling classical Christianity, everything. That it enters the field that science and technology become our new messiah.
Yes.
Medicine, science, technology, there's nothing that education cannot solve, okay?
We can save ourselves.
But see, then you have revolutions in education. One of the books that my friend Vin's going to publish, if I'm alive,
yes.
or he's alive, next year is on educational radical changes in education. Well, who cares? My major is not Christian education. I'm not interested in multicultural. Well, I want to show you where multicultural comes into the academy. Every major institution in our culture, not only in America, but America, has succumbed to that. While you still have majors in Christian education that's still singing Kumbaya when the whole world is imploding. And as soon as the kids in those classes leave those classes, they're faced with these influences.
And they have no capacity to understand or critique or survive.
Praise his name, we can have a revival.
So they throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Now,
thinking, well,
they dispense, they don't even wash in it. They just,
right.
The kid goes out.
Yeah.
But see, most people, it's not enough to show me that 5 or 6 of 10 or 15 survive.
Right.
Most people wouldn't stand a chance. As minute that they leave the mother's womb and get out of here, if they're going to do anything that they think they ought to do, they're going to be faced with these influences.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So it's there's no way to overestimate, I think, these influences. No possible way.
Well, I know you talked about Einstein's relativity thesis and how powerful of an influencing force that was. And the next person on your list is someone else from physics, Heisenberg, and his indeterminacy principle, and is applied to quantum physics. And as you wrote there, he dealt with the confusion between the limited methodological access and the actual state of affairs. Heisenberg maintained that you could not locate the speed and the position of an atom in the same equation.
But he did not deny that you could locate the speed and the location in multiple equations. Of course, he wasn't denying that they didn't have them.
Right. It was just the idea that if you want to know with a certain degree of precision the location, then you've got to measure for that. But then if you want to know the trajectory, you have to measure for that.
You have to measure those two measurements.
Right. Because the way that we interact with the quantum world is so disruptive.
But it gets us into pantheistic quantum physics.
Well, but that's but as you've said, and a lot of people have said, that's because some people interpret that indeterminacy in some kind of ontological way and not merely a limitation to what we can know.
Now, I think it's a limitation of methodology, not a limit. The world is still structured.
Right. It's just that we disrupt.
Because even
so
Heisenberg could figure those out.
Right.
Of genius, of course, and everybody isn't a genius.
Sure.
But he didn't doubt that you could locate them, just not in the same equation.
Right. Just because of the inherent limitation of how we're able to measure.
Now, he did not make that distinction, and out of Heisenberg you get what you're doing in quantum physics. Well, quantum physics, the new age is crazy about. I remember that in the 60s and 70s and even now.
Sure.
Crazy about quantum physics because it looked like new age pantheism is exactly quantum physics.
And
correct or not?
Right. I mean, there are movements out now where they talk about trying to explain the healing of Jesus through quantum physics. Like, Jesus was one of these people who had the ability to focus and manipulate the quantum field, and therefore then turn a Snicker bar into a Milky Way bar.
Yeah, or into rattlesnakes.
Sure.
No, I hear you.